Okay, so to the final part of building our trim sheets and our mesh decals. We're going to do a really quick mesh decal base down here, but to do them, we're going to avoid putting them actually on the final mesh. We're going to do them off this mesh and bring them back in. You don't necessarily have to do them this way, but it will teach you another methodology for some other things you can probably find use for. But before we get into that, let's talk about corrosion in stone and things like that. And I get nitpicky when I try to do something that I haven't done before and I don't know basically the physics behind it. A lot of people just go in there and sculpt. I like to be a little bit more informed and understand what I'm trying to achieve. That way when I sculpt it myself, I can just play with it. It's just my curiosity bug. So for stone, I went out and tried to find an explanation scientifically how this stuff breaks out. So let me show you a couple things I found just today. So first off, I always find some kind of crack, right? This is a mishmash. This isn't actually limestone. It's supposed to be a limestone, but you can tell by all the separate rock pieces that it's not. But it still is a great crack to look at if we're going to make cracks. Another thing I found online was this, and this is an interesting website that has actually beyond what we need, but it has, if you go into the today and you go into, and I'll put this in the link, I think it's welcome events and then causes of the damage. It actually breaks down how stone deteriorates in little infographic things. So they're little quick animations that go over, like rain gets into the crack and then the water freezes and it expands it, and then that crack then melts away and it obviously causes more kind of chips away. And it goes through a bunch of these different options of how cracks happen. Like if they say if the stone was placed originally, the grain of the stone was vertical, not horizontal, and then you put something heavy on top of it, it's going to basically shale off and like a piece of it over here. Things like that. And then there's another one, I think this is how biological weathering and how you get lichen and all that on there, and mold and moss. So anyway, I looked through some stuff and I found some different types of things. And what they're doing is, and it's interesting because what they're doing is they're rebuilding a Colosseum in France somewhere. If you look at, here, let me go to the main menu here. If you look at this, they're trying to rebuild this in the city of Nimes, but before they do that, they have to understand how and what happened to make it the way it is. So that's where they get this all science research. And science is great for this way, and it's great to be able to play around. And you can jump around, you can check out the restoration, you can do a virtual visit and kind of fly through. Another thing that was in here is, there's pictures out there where I missed them. There's pictures, and they talk about the scientific and how they get this stuff, but these are great pictures of how different types of stone, this limestone in this case, had corroded or gotten worse over the years. So these are the kind of things that I like to look at and like to see. And Rome did use plaster and stuff, so they had other options in there. But then I look up limestone corrosion and I look up how things crack and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where I found this picture. They have different Anyway, so before I start digging into anything, I like to get all kinds of research and understand what I'm digging into. And that's the geek in me, but it's not a bad habit to get into, especially if you're going to be building something from scratch. What we're going to do is we're going to build a few places where the stone has broken away, and then we're going to build a few places where we have cracks, and then I'm going to put like a wooden peg inside of a stone base, or maybe a stone, just little things. I'm going to throw some stuff on there. And the idea behind a decal is we want to make sure that it fits into a square area. So if I do a slash, I have to make sure that it fits into a square area. I have to make sure the crack goes, maybe diagonally is the best way to get a longest version of the crack. Things like that. The way we're going to do it and make our lives a little easier is we're going to put them on squares instead of putting them this way. So
after this first one, I'll time lapse it so you don't have to watch me muddle through the others.
I'm going to take this, click on it, and go to a mesh, right? And I'm going to divide it a few times. Oops, I got to change it to a poly mesh. Then divide it a few times. I'm going to look up here, 1.5 million, that's pretty good. So there's a few things you could do. You could use the tools that we have, that we've seen from Orb, or you could start making your own tools, or you could play with things. I'm actually going to take a little of both. So I'm going to go ahead and load up some of my brushes from Orb real quick. Okay, so we're going to, instead of building these independently, we're going to And also one of the things I do is I also open up brush. And we might as well grab the alpha because we're going to mess with that too. So if I try and drag it over here, it's going to be a jerk, but we'll see if it works this time. Nope, it does it every time for me. And maybe it doesn't for you, but it does for me. I don't like it on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that one, but we're going to come inside of brushes because if I do that brush without moving them all up in here, they're just sitting right there for me to play with. So I'm going to come over to the cracks brush and I'm going to start looking at that crack that I had up a minute ago. And I'm going to look at it, and inside here, I'm going to make my brush small. I'm going to see if my brush is where I want it to be. And look at it like this. And kind of just break it down and look like natural. Now, I may want to end it, and it's probably smarter if I do. So this whole cracking across the whole surface is probably not the best idea. You probably want to keep everything in like this area. So you could either, go ahead and do a larger brush and do something like this, or turn on the focus. There. Do something like that, and then invert it by clicking off of it, right? And then go back in and load or brush. So I'm going to pull my focal shift up a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to take a look at my crack though. And also, if you want to make this a little bit smoother in here, if you hold Control and click, it'll soften it up a little bit. So if I look at my crack and I make it like this big, how big? See, it's still not big enough, so we'll do it bigger. That's probably too big. And since we're doing stylized, this might work. I probably want to get it a little bit deeper too. All right, so I'm going to take it here, and I'm just going to figure out where I want this crack to be. I'm not really super crazy about the brush being this big because it makes all these artifacty things, but that's fine. Okay, and then if I look at the picture, you'll see that there are places where it comes out and breaks off from that. So I'll come back in there, and that may be too small. Like this. And then maybe I'll do a little bit of a cut inside here. I'll pull this in. And if you want to get good at cracks, really understanding how cracks work is the key to that. And I'm still not a master at cracks because I do them not enough. They just don't come up. Okay, so we'll do this, like that. You want to give them a little bit of padding around the outside here. Something like this. Maybe even make it bigger and fill that, or push back on that one so it goes back deeper. And then what we can always do is come back, since we want to keep it stylized, come back to our environment here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete lower. I'm going to come to clay polish, and we're going to clay polish real quick and see if we get anything we like. Let's undo that. It's a little bit cleaner. That's pretty good. So that'll be our first one. It's not perfect by any means. You probably need to come in here and really edit some of this stuff inside of here. We could take it and make it kind of crackly on the sides here. Maybe go back to Damien Standard and just break it up a little bit more. Like that. Okay. We're going to say that's great, and we're going to clay polish it again, and we're going to deselect it and clay polish it again. And deselect it, and then clay polish it again. And maybe we'll turn up the soft. Yeah, that's fine. So anyway, you get this first one. And now that I've made it so deep, I should probably come in here and carve in some detail into the side here, just to make it feel like it's got something going on. This is the reason I like Dynamesh, but we'll leave it for this one, and the next one I'll make it a Dynamesh. Okay, pull this in. And we see a couple little fractures going off into nothing. And then this side gets some darker. Like that. And then do the clay polish. Unselect it, clay polish. And then we can come in here and do stuff like soften it. And there's a few things you can do on top of this. You can come in here, go back to like rock noise, and just do the old school as a really light. Again, too light. Something like that. Maybe too heavy. And pull it off to the side a little bit. And then, you can take the brush and make it bigger and just get larger areas just to break it up a little bit. Okay. And we'll see if we like that. And then, of course, we can come back and clay polish and get something cleaner. Not super crazy about it, but it'll do for now. Okay. For this first pass, I would take time and really spend time on it. So for us, the next step, and this is the last one I'll talk about as I go through it because it's a really fast one. But the next thing we do is instead of building this object over and over, building it into the wall, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and say, go to standard or something. I'm going to say F to zoom in. Now you'll notice that it's not fully zoomed in. We want it to be zoomed in all the way, whether it is to the edge here. If you have to change the size of the canvas, that's fine too, but we just need it to be full screen. All right, everything in here is full screen. It makes it look really bad, actually. So let me just soften some of this stuff up. Actually, it's not going to really matter, but we'll do it a little bit there. Because I can't stop. Okay, so we get something we like, and this is not it, but this is what we're going to work with. So we get something we like, and now we need to make a alpha out of it. So if we click this button right here, and we say, we've done this before, I know, and we say grab dock, now I've got this alpha perfectly laid out for me, and now I can come back to this and turn it to a drag rect, and that way I know it's going to be inside of a rectangle. And I can start in the center here and do I think, yeah. I'll turn it way up. Wait, 1 second. Oh, I did trim. How did that happen? Well, that sucks. Let me go back to this. Change it to that one we just made. Change it to drag rect and drag it out. There we go. So now it's positive. It's supposed to be sub. So it's already negative. So I need to make it positive. So by doing this right here, I get that cut. Now I can turn it way up. And then we see what we get is a little bit of fall off. That's why we bring up the alpha. And in the alpha, we're going to mess with the modify and change the fall off a little bit. So we don't have any more fall off. It's actually going to fall off towards the edge more. And then we're going to change the surface to do this. There we go. So by surface, it's trying to even it out. So we start in the middle, we pull it out, and we get our dark area. And now we have our crack. Okay, now I'm going to do that same thing, and I'm going to build a couple more pieces, and that'll be it for today. And what I'll do is I'll do them in class with you so you can watch me, but then when I post them, I'll speed post them so you don't have to listen to me babble the whole time. You can just watch and see if that works any better for you. Okay, and we'll talk to you in a little bit.